what I guess I would want to stress the most is the goodness of God. You know, He's present always, and He walks you through. He goes out ahead of you, He's behind you, He's beside you, and oftentimes He carries you.
Well, I grew up in kind of a Catholic background as a young kid, and so I kind of always believed in God. Mostly was forced upon me, but come to know the Lord, but in reality, probably about the age of 15 or so, I come to know the Lord more, as in my heart, more of a heart change kind of a thing. I was into drugs, and not heavy drugs, but marijuana and drinking as much as I can get my hands on. Different kinds of that, light drugs, if you call them that. And so partied a lot, but looking for just basically joy. And then I got away with being naughty, so to speak, till I was probably 17, I think, right around the middle of a junior year at high school. So I suddenly was getting in trouble. I never really did at all. It's usually pretty good. And then all of a sudden I had a lot of, policemen that was not on duty caught us, my buddies. Then of course my parents were up, or their antennas were up, knowing to look for such things. So I got in trouble with them a couple of times, and then they're realizing, hey, and so I ended up going to outpatient treatment and stuff. And it was a pretty tough time. Certainly no joy for me. And then I come to know, meanwhile, my sister come to know the Lord about 10 years earlier with Billy Graham. And so my sister became Christians, and she married a Christian fella, brother-in-law, and stands to reason. So she prayed for our family, and then probably in a very short time, everybody was being worked on from different angles. I was getting in trouble with drugs and things. My brothers, two brothers anyways, one had kind of become a Christian and was starting to go, and the other one was, and so was and basically we all come to know the Lord probably in a month's time, that we're seeing this change in everybody. So going to this church, this church from many years ago. It's actually even more Pentecostal, but it was a good church. It was a good church to grow up in. They taught us a lot of teach yourself, don't follow mindlessly. About I never was born and raised how to do things. Catholic Church sort of, but not really. And so, but I saw the peace and joy these people had, and so I just was drawn to that. So I really wasn't after salvation insurance. I was into just seeking the Lord and the love that He has for me, and the joy that I saw in these people. It seemed like I could have it for myself, which turned out to be true. So I jumped in and pretty much stayed with Christianity my whole life after that. So I met Diana, and so I've known her as a Christian most of my life, rather than any other times, So that's pretty much my testimony. Diana and I got to a church a Church of the Open Door, actually. Pretty good church, real big though, and we ended up moving out to Buffalo, and we just realized when our kids come to growing up, if they're gonna get friends that are in this church, or friends in a church. It's important that they have someone that lives down the street rather than we got to drive them 30 minutes to any event or anything like that. It would just be too tough to raise kids. And so that was one of the big reasons that we came to Buffalo, was just because we were living in Buffalo. And so kudos to whoever did the website at first, because that's pretty much what we went to buy. We tried in other churches and stuff, but this one we just had a real good fit. People are awesome, which I'm sure we'll get into, but all the awesome stuff that's done for me.
A shout out to the kids ministry here though too, because we put the kids in Sunday school that first Sunday we came here, and we thought, we sat in the service and we were just kind of, we were a little uncertain, and the kids came out of Sunday school and they said, we like this church. And we went, okay then. And so that's kind of how we landed here.
Yeah, that was a big deal. And it's worked. Both our kids, I think, have church friends and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, we just wanted to be in a church that was the same community that we were living in and our kids were growing up in. It seemed important at the time.
And for us, both of us started out in kind of smaller churches, and so we liked the smaller church rather than the larger one. So we got plugged in, and so some effort on our part in respect of just got to get involved. For us anyways, can't just sit, but simply just small groups. There's always a small group of some sort available. So I think that's what kind of helped keep us in place. And then Diana has since, me too, but Diana since has gotten some close friends. So irreplaceable type. So we love it here.
Well,
with Luke first, I would think.
Yeah, well, actually, I would take it back to like 2007 and 2008. We had moved from New Hope out to Rockford in 2004, and we had started a rental business where we had a bunch of rental properties back in the Crystal and New Hope area, and we thought that was a good financial decision for us, to maybe be able to invest in our future. And then in 2007, the housing market burst, the bubble burst, and we had some very risky loans. And we always thought the worst thing that would happen is we would just sell the house and break even, but that did not happen. And so we were in a bit of a financial crisis at that time. And then in the middle of all that, my dad died unexpectedly. So,
that's right.
Yeah. So for the first time, I think, and I feel like I should backtrack a little bit, that I guess I was under the mentality that, we just, if we know Jesus and if we're obeying him and we're serving him, that everything should just go well, And so it was for the first time for me, anyway, that it felt like everything was kind of falling apart. And so it was a hard lesson to learn, but it was a good lesson to learn. That when things are tough, God is still good. And that's the first time I would say we really felt walked through. We lost our homes, including our one in Rockford. And Joe's dad and his stepmom were gracious enough to buy the house here in Buffalo until we were able to purchase it ourselves. So, and ironically, that happened like a month after we lost Luke unexpectedly in 2000. We lost Luke in December of 2015, just before Christmas. And, it just, I guess for what, we've learned and obviously now with him, I don't want to say losing his battle with cancer, but it's becoming evident that that he's probably going home soon. And Sorry. What I guess I would want to stress the most is the goodness of God. You know, He's present always, and He walks you through. He goes out ahead of you. He's behind you. He's beside you, and oftentimes He carries you. And it's not about this life, you know. I think even as Christians, you know, we think, okay, we've got, you know, that assurance that we will be with the Lord, and that our eternity is kind of set for us, and it is. But the perspective that we have in this life oftentimes isn't changed, and we would be definitely guilty of that, you know, that we just had that whole perspective of, okay, our kids are going to grow up and get married and have children, and we're going to be grandparents, and we're going to retire, and you know, and just everything was just based on what this life looked like. And now it isn't. Now it's really probably the correct perspective for us, where we see this life as that little grain of sand on that huge 10-mile beach, you know, that compared to eternity, it's kind of insignificant. I mean, it's significant in the fact that we have work to do here, and we have how we live our life is important, but boy, compared to eternity, it's not. And I think that changes when you have somebody you really love that's gone out ahead of you or is getting ready to go ahead of you. So, I don't even remember the question. Did I answer it? Okay, well, that would be where we've seen God move in really hard times.
Yeah, with Luke was the first, for me, the big hit. Your dad was the first one for you, I guess, but for me and the family, Luke, you know, because our kids have always had a little bit of, some have had fear of just being alone. And so this is like proof that, oh, it really could happen that I'm alone, you know, so it's very hard on some of them. But the prayer and the caring, the people showing caring, going forth, doing what they can. I'm not sure what one of them could do for kids, but for late teenage, what kind of things they want, but we appreciate the meals and all that kind of stuff, and the help and different kinds of stuff like that.
I think our kids have watched the body of Christ operate the way that it's supposed to operate, you know, and where they have watched not only God do amazing things in our family and be very present to us, but they've watched it through other believers who have stepped in, and you know, and so I think that there's some peace in that they know that if their family numbers start to dwindle, they're still not alone, you know. I know God has done some big things in Isaac and Mackenzie's hearts, and has grown them up pretty quickly. But good stuff, and I'm excited to see what He's going to do with their future, because their perspective has changed. You know, they don't have your typical 20 or 23-year-old perspective on life either.
Mm-hmm.
So,
kind of stuck with the reality that, like, we hear this time we have can only be short. You never know. Is more reality, I guess. So it's sort of a blessing, sort of course not, but it is in the fact that it hits home more.
It's taught them to have their faith be their own, you know, and not to ride on the coat strings of their parents, or, you know, or just base it on, oh, you know, well, I said yes to Jesus back when I was a kid, and so, you know, there's nothing else that needs to happen. They are fully aware that faith is a growth process, and that they're 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and just God's grace, on top of that I just, they grew up quickly. And quicker than I did. I think about that. I grew up in a Christian home, and in a church that taught us to read the Word and, and to know it well. And I'm grateful for that. That's a wonderful, blessing that I had growing up in that environment. But I didn't really understand the grace of God and the difference between conviction and feeling convicted and feeling shamed, what was destructive and what was helpful to build you up. And so I think I learned at a young age to put that mask on and to walk into church and be, I didn't want anybody to know that things were messy ever, I think that's a really important thing to teach people, kids especially, as they're finding their way in their faith, that it's okay to be messy. Life is messy.
Yeah.
And you need the grace of Jesus. You need him. You're not going to do it on your own. It won't work.
So a quick touch on cancer, I suppose, is that it certainly hit myself on the head with a 2x4. I've the realization that, one thing is, I guess I am a Christian. I'm not fearful. I just, it was certainly a shock, but only for about a half an hour. I probably went through all the stages of grief and acceptance and everything in a short time. So, if people have been praying for me like crazy, you can kind of feel it. And it must be the toughest thing in the world for people to pray. Do you pray for healing? Do you pray for God's will? Or do you pray just so hard? So I don't know.
Our family has felt that peace. It's crazy. We're sad. Obviously, we're sad. But that peace has been just a flow, an undercurrent in our home. And like I said before, God's good. He's incredibly good. And, Christian or non-Christian, you're going to go through these things. That's life. And we were never promised as believers that we would be, we'd get to escape those things. We don't. But I can't imagine going through it without the Lord. I can't even get my mind around that. Don't think I would do it. I don't think I'd be standing.
Boy, yeah.
So don't tell me I'm strong. Because this is not my strength that I walk in.
Yeah, it would be so hopeless, I can't imagine. So, and then we keep getting these reprieves. Mine is, okay, up now this seems to be working up, it's not, and now it is. And actually I'm even getting to the point of, it can't just be done,
Yeah.
Ready for the next steps, next life, real life.
What's really stood out to me with the cancer thing is that healing. And I remember Dave Johnson, the pastor that was at Open Door for many years, preaching on this a long time ago when he had lost a number of people in a short amount of time that were really dear to him. And he talked about that God heals either way, no matter what, healing happens. So is healing a part of, what Jesus did? Yes, but healing can happen here physically, but and that is a miracle, and God still does that. But the biggest miracle, I think, is the healing that comes when you leave this body behind and you move on. The miracle of Christ's work on the cross and paying that debt for us so that we have the opportunity to have eternal life. And it's probably, from what I understand, a life that's much richer and fuller than we could imagine than what we've ever lived here, even at our healthiest. So to me, that that is the big miracle of healing. So no matter what, there's healing, you know.
Well, for me, one of the bigger things is reality. What's real? What's important? We are all going to die, and so that's a big deal. Every day I kind of, do we live with purpose? Just a little bit of it. Am I living with purpose? And it just seems like an important thing, because especially for me, it feels like, for me, that what's the use if I'm going to be gone in a couple of days? But it's been doing that for weeks now. So usually I'll pray, is there any kind of purpose in things? And so doing these kind of things is nice. It feels like I'm getting a little stuff done of sorts. Mm-hmm. And so that's my big thing, is just to start living with a little more purpose. That's not where happiness comes from, not that kind of purpose. Purpose, which is awful. But purpose, just the freedom when you find something that frees you up in Christ, of things to do, of this thing that you love to do. That kind of purpose is important to me, I guess.
Yeah, I think maybe I could tag on to that. Kind of similar is your goals in life and what you want to get out of this life.
That's good.
Changes, and I've learned that the most fulfilling goal is centered around God's will. And so even thinking about, what my life would look like after Joe's gone, I'll have to, there's just a certain amount of things you just have to do, regarding your job and, and providing. But also, what kind of things would God call me to do? Where would he call me to serve? I want to get plugged in again, but I want to be really in tune to what he wants me to do, not just what I think I should do. That makes any sense? Purpose. It's more important now. Yeah. How does he want to use me? And that's kind of exciting, too. There's some things I wish would have changed that haven't. Maybe how I use my time sometimes, not staring at my phone all the time. But definitely, I guess, like you said, it crosses over my perspective on what's important. I don't care about what kind of car I drive or, how big or how fancy my home is. I still would love to live in the country. But I guess what's changed is that I have a better understanding of what's important. So, and that's following what the Lord has planned for you, and being willing to step out and say and do the things that he wants you to do. Because there's a dying world out there. I mean, we all know it's getting hard. It's getting really rough out there. And people are feeling hopeless. And I would like to think that we have a role in showing people hope and showing them who Jesus is.
Yeah, it's got to be difficult, I think, for a lot of people. To, what should I do for you now, Lord, when I have options, like Nick right now, I really don't have many options, so I'm seeking as I can for short term, because everything is short term, but someone that's got kids, little kids, and they got a job, and they got to be planning their life out of sorts. That's got to be kind of difficult.
Yeah, I guess we just don't have to have everything completely figured out. You know, we don't. Kind of rest and trust the Lord. Trust has been huge. I really can say I've actually learned how to do that now. You know, something we didn't talk about, I don't want this to get too long, but it changed our marriage too, a lot of stuff. And I would say that was more key when we lost Luke, because I guess I don't really necessarily know why, you know. I felt like prior to that I was probably just kind of, I don't know, numb and just going through the motions of life, you know, and it wakes you up, and it changes a lot of things, including our marriage. You know, I would say, as a married couple, don't be afraid to confront the truth about your relationships, and you know what, you know, you are doing things that are hurting each other. You are doing things that are detrimental to your marriage, and your relationship with each other, and it's okay to tackle those things. It's okay to get help tackling those things, and to do counseling, and because you want to put the work in, you know. Kind of stinks, you know, you put the work in, you know, we have, and now it's a short-lived thing. But, you know, just because you've been married to someone for almost 30 years doesn't mean that you've been doing your best to make that work.
Well, for me, one of the bigger things is reality. What's real? What's important? You know, we are all going to die, and so that's a big deal. I've been every day. I kind of, you know, do we live with purpose? Just a little bit of it. Am I living with purpose? And it just seems like an important thing, because especially I don't know, for me, it feels like for me that what's the use if I'm going to be gone in a couple of days? But it's been doing that for weeks now. So that's my big thing, is just to start living with a little more purpose. That's not where happiness comes from, not that kind of purpose. Purpose, which is awful. But purpose, just the freedom when you find something that frees you up in Christ, of things to do, of this thing that you love to do. That kind of purpose is important to me, I guess.